Okay, so picture a map of a country, a big one, right? Now, if you imagine protests, you're probably thinking of, red light blinking in the capital, maybe a few other big cities.
Sure, the usual hotspots.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in late December 2025, if you looked at a map of Iran, it wasn't a few blinking lights. It was like someone just smashed the whole dashboard. 170 different locations, all at once.
It's an incredible number.
North, south, big industrial centers, even tiny provincial towns. It was a nationwide explosion.
And that's the thing, the sheer geographic spread is what really stops you in your tracks. I mean, we are not talking about a handful of political activists in Tehran.
No.
We're talking about 31 provinces. But, and here's the crazy part, if you were an outsider trying to figure out what was happening around, say, January 8th, you'd have seen nothing. Just a void.
A total void. And that's the information blackout the sources keep talking about. It's honestly terrifying to think about. Right around that date, January 8th, the digital lights just went out.
A near total internet shutdown.
So while the physical map was on fire, the digital signal was just flatlining.
And that silence was not an accident. It was tactical. It was absolutely a deliberate move. We now know that the blackout was designed to cover up what we're now calling the bloody days of January 8th and 9th.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We've got this stack of reports, we have eyewitness accounts, economic data. All of it has been slowly leaking out from behind that digital curtain.
Right.
And we need to piece it together. What exactly happened during those 48 hours? And maybe more importantly, how did a protest about the price of bread? How did that morph into a full-blown challenge against the entire political system?
It's a heavy topic for sure, but it's an essential one because the numbers we're looking at in these documents, I mean, they're just staggering. We're talking about a casualty event that rivals major historical massacres, and the world is only just now starting to catch up to the reality of it.
Okay, so let's start with the why, because looking at the timeline in our research packet, this didn't begin as a revolution. It really started as a grocery bill.
That's it. Late December 2025. And the economic data is grim.
Grim is putting it lightly.
It really is. It was a story of pure survival. If you look at the purchasing power of an average Iranian family in December, I mean, it had just evaporated. The inflation wasn't just high, it was completely out of control.
Runaway. I was looking at some of the specifics in the notes, and it's that kind of inflation where your salary is basically worthless by the time you even get paid. It just breaks the whole social contract.
Totally. You go to buy bread or medicine or whatever, and the price has doubled since last week.
So that's the spark.
That is the spark.
Yeah.
And initially, the people in the streets, they weren't chanting about government structure or foreign policy. They were demanding economic relief.
They just wanted to feed their families.
They wanted the currency to stabilize. A very, very primal material grievance.
And this is the part that I found most fascinating in the analysis. That phase didn't last long at all. The shift from we're hungry to we want a new government.
Yeah.
It happened at warp speed.
Incredibly fast. I mean, usually you see a gradual escalation over weeks, maybe months. Here, it was a matter of days. And you have to ask, why?
Right. What caused that?
The sources all suggest it's because of the state's response. When a population screams, "We're hungry," and the state answers not with bread, but with batons and tear gas, the grievance instantly mutates.
It kind of confirms their worst fears, doesn't it? That the system isn't just incompetent, it's actually hostile to them.
Precisely. The slogan analysis in the reports shows this evolution perfectly. You literally see the chance shift from specific economic demands to just general political condemnation almost overnight.
And the demographic mix, too.
Oh, yeah. Look at who was there. This wasn't just the working class, and it wasn't just students. It was workers, students, merchants groups that don't always see eye to eye suddenly on the same side of the barricade.
That broad coalition, that's usually the biggest danger sign for any regime. When the merchants in the bazaar start agreeing with the students in the university, you've got a real problem.
It's the classic powder keg scenario. So you have 170 locations, you have this unified anger, and a really rapid radicalization of demands. And that leads us directly into the watershed moment, January 8th and 9th.
The bloody days. I want to take a moment here because the details in the sources are, they're just harrowing. This wasn't crowd control.
No, not even close. This was a military operation against civilians. The reports focus heavily on cities like Rasht and Fardis, but this was happening simultaneously in many, many places. Security forces stopped using non-lethal deterrent. They opened fire on large, dense crowds.
Or the numbers. The casualty numbers reflect that. I had to reread the estimates in the report 3 times. We're used to hearing about dozens killed in crackdowns.
Right.
But the sources here, based on leaked local health data and morgue records, they're suggesting the death toll is in the thousands.
It's a number that's really hard to process. Thousands of people in a 48-hour window. And to give that some context, that kind of number, it overwhelms the actual physical infrastructure of a city.
The morgues were full.
The morgues were full. Emergency rooms are basically turning into war zones.
And speaking of emergency rooms, that brings us to another layer of this tragedy that we absolutely have to highlight: the violation of medical neutrality.
This is one of the darkest parts of the report. In international norms, even in most wars, hospitals are supposed to be sanctuaries. You do not touch the wounded in a hospital.
It's a protected space.
It should be. But here, we have verified reports of security forces entering hospitals to detain wounded protesters, literally pulling them from their beds.
Imagine the psychological terror of that. You survive a shooting, you get dragged to a hospital, and then the people who shot you walk into the ER to arrest you while you're still bleeding.
It effectively weaponizes the entire healthcare system. It forces people into an impossible choice. You either die of your wounds at home, or you go to the hospital and risk immediate arrest, maybe disappearance.
So there's a secondary death toll. People who are too afraid to even get help.
Exactly, and it didn't end there. There's the detail about the families, the ones trying to retrieve bodies, this pay-to-bury extortion.
Unbelievable.
Yes. Reports indicate families were being pressured to pay huge sums of money just to have the bodies of their loved ones released for burial. It's a tactic designed for maximum psychological and, well, financial pain.
It sends a message.
A brutal one. It says, you will pay for your defiance, literally, even after death.
It's so cool. But is it risky for them? I mean, doesn't that level of cruelty just solidify the hatred against the system?
Oh, it does. In the long run, it burns bridges that can never be rebuilt. But in the short term, it creates fear. And fear is what they were banking on to clear the streets.
And to make sure the rest of the world couldn't see it happening, that's when they pulled the plug on the internet. We touched on this, but let's dig in. This wasn't just like slowing down Instagram.
No, not at all. This was a digital siege. Starting right around January 8th, not a coincidence, Iran implemented a near-total shutdown. Cut off access to global services almost entirely, which, by the way, is incredibly difficult to do in a modern economy.
It shows you how desperate they were to control the narrative. If no videos get out, did it really happen? That's the logic, I guess.
That is the logic. They wanted a window of time to crush the uprising without, the UN or European powers watching a live stream of it.
But information?
Yeah.
It always finds a way out. We have these reports now because people took enormous risks to smuggle data out. And what's coming out isn't just about the street violence, but the judicial violence that came next.
That's phase 2, yeah. Once the streets are cleared, the courtrooms fill up. We already have confirmation of at least one death sentence for a young protester. The judiciary is signaling that they are going to use fast-track trials and executions.
No due process. Just a conveyor belt of sentencing.
Exactly. It's the legalization of the crackdown. But here's where this deep dive gets really interesting. Despite the massacre, despite the blackout, despite the threat of execution, the sources say the resistance hasn't actually stopped.
It's just changed its shape. It's gone from the town square to the rooftops.
Right. You can clear a street with machine guns, but you can't clear an entire neighborhood of its sentiments. So people are chanting from windows, from rooftops at night. Yeah. And I want to talk about what they're chanting, because you flagged this earlier, the pre-1979 slogans.
Yeah, this really stood out to me. Slogans praising the monarchy that was overthrown in 1979. Now, to a casual observer, that might sound like they just want the king back. But is that what's really going on?
It's a great question. And it's much more nuanced than that. It's not necessarily a political endorsement of the old monarchy's policies. It's a rhetorical weapon. It's the ultimate insult to the current Islamic Republic.
How so?
Well, by cheering for the very system that the current regime defines itself against, the protesters are basically saying the thing you call evil was actually better than you.
It's a total delegitimization. It's saying the last 40-plus years were a complete mistake.
Exactly. It hits the regime right in its ideological soft spot, a total rejection of their entire revolutionary narrative.
So you have this population that's just ideologically checking out. You have a collapsing economy. But here's the twist that I think makes this situation different from past protests. The regime itself seems to be cracking.
This is the part that, geopolitical analysts are staring at very, very closely. Usually in these moments, the regime presents a monolithic front. Everyone stays on message. But the sources highlight this very public dissent from a very surprising figure, the president's son.
This blew my mind. The president's son publicly urged the authorities to restore the internet. He didn't just whisper it. He made a public argument that the blackout is actually fueling more dissatisfaction.
And think about who he's talking to. He isn't talking to the protesters. He's signaling to the business elite, the technocrats, the people within the system who are watching their own wealth just evaporate because the internet is down.
He's basically screaming, this strategy is suicide.
He's articulating a major fracture between the, let's call them pragmatists, who know you need the internet to run a modern economy, and the hardliners, who only see the internet as a security threat.
So it's a vicious cycle. You have an economic protest, so you shut down the internet to stop it, which then crashes the economy even further, which just makes people angrier.
It is a feedback loop of instability. And for the president's son to speak out like that, it suggests that there are powerful people inside the halls of power who know this is completely unsustainable. They're terrified the security solution is actually killing the host.
And meanwhile, you have the international pressure building. The response hasn't been quiet.
Not at all. The U.S. issued immediate leave now travel advisories, but the real pressure cooker is Europe. There are serious high-level debates happening right now about designating the Revolutionary Guard, the IRGC, as a terrorist organization.
That would be a massive escalation. I mean, that puts them in the same category as a group like ISIS in the eyes of European law.
It would have huge legal and financial implications, and Tehran knows this. They are panicking diplomatically. They summon the Italian ambassador. Italy is often that key bridge between Iran and Europe, and warned of destructive consequences if the EU goes through with it.
So they are fighting a war on 3 fronts now. The people in the streets, a crumbling economy, and this immense international diplomatic pressure.
It's the perfect storm. And the government's toolkit is shrinking. They really only have one tool left, force. But as we've discussed, force has diminishing returns.
So let's bring it to today, January 28th, 2026. If we look at that map now, the flashing lights might be gone, but what's left behind?
Trauma. Just a deep collective trauma. You have a nation that has lost thousands of its children in 48 hours. They're living in digital isolation. Their money is worthless. The streets might be quieter today than on January 9th, but it is a sullen, angry quiet.
It sounds like a ceasefire, not a peace.
It's containment. But you cannot contain an economic collapse with bullets. The underlying drivers, inflation, corruption, mismanagement, they're all still there. In fact, they're worse because of the blackout.
It just highlights the whole tragedy of the situation.
Right.
The initial demand was so simple. We want to be able to afford to live. And the answer they got was a massacre.
And that changes a society forever. You don't just go back to normal after that. The trust is gone. The fear is there, yes, but the legitimacy of the state has been shattered.
I just keep coming back to that image of the president's son. If the people at the very top are starting to sweat, starting to break ranks, it tells you that they know how precarious this whole thing is.
It tells you they know the blackout isn't a long-term solution. You can't keep a country of 80 million people in the dark forever. Eventually, the lights have to come back on, and when they do, all the problems will still be there staring them right in the face.
And that's the thought I think we should leave our listeners with today. We started with the image of 170 flashing red lights. The regime smashed the dashboard to stop the flashing. But the engine is still overheating.
And the pressure is still building.
So, if even the president's own family is questioning the methods, are we maybe witnessing the beginning of a split within the regime itself? And in a world like ours, can you ever truly kill an idea that has already taken root in 170 cities just by pulling a plug on the internet?
History would suggest you can't. You can delay it, but you can't delete it.
A very sobering deep dive today, but an important one. We'll be keeping a close eye on how this develops, especially on those European sanctions. For now, stay curious, stay informed,